Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hey, Dana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I feel like we haven't talked in a while. I kind of miss you.
I know. I felt the same way. I know. It's too long. It's been too long. I've just been like nuts lately.
Well, I'm super excited. You have a great guest that you've just been raving about. So I'm going to let you kick us off with him.
Yes, we are super excited to have Tyler Dickerhoof here on the podcast today. We both met Tyler through John Maxwell's network, through Exchange. Yep. And Tyler recently spoke at one of our coaching summits, and everyone just is still talking about it. So I was like, you've got to come on the podcast. So Tyler, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Dana. And good to see you, Linda. I always, whenever we go to the Maxwell events, it's kind of a little bit of a family reunion / we're going to go to school and work and study. And there's never enough time to really catch up with everyone. But I'm glad to be catching up with both of you again today.
Yes. It is kind of a whirlwind. And plus, I always explain to everybody, I take my leadership team. So I try to spend as much time as possible with them the whole time I'm there. But I want to spend it with everybody because I want to get to know everybody and make new friendships and all kinds of things.
I finally, first of all, did you guys get your guitars yet?
No, did you?
Adam got his, but I didn't get mine. But then I realized it was because I haven't finished filling out my form yet. So he said he filled out his feedback form like really early, and I guess they went in order of who filled out their feedback forms.
Well, that's going to count me out. I haven't even seen the feedback. I can't even find the feedback form.
Linda,
I filled something out.
You did fill something out? Okay, I'm going to send it to you. But that was one thing.
See, I fill out the survey because I'm a person that I'm considerate. I know it's someone doing their job. Now, my wife, on the other hand, is like, the only people that fill out surveys are the only people that have something to complain about. So those are the only people that fill out surveys. So she refuses to fill them out. I fill them out. In this case, it's kind of that award that you get for filling it out. I had not much to complain about, really.
Yes.
Not much, but.
Well, the guitars are pretty cool. I saw Adam's, so hopefully I'll be getting mine soon. But what I was going to say was I did fill out on there that I kind of wish there was one extra day. Like it was one day longer. Because I feel like we like go, which I love to stay busy the whole time that we're there. But I wish also we had a little bit more time to be with John and be with everybody else. And so anyway, Yeah. Well, so, okay, Tyler, kick us off by just telling us, Linda always says like you were born and then what?
Then what happened?
Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Ohio. I am a Buckeye, born. Both my parents graduated from Ohio State. I did not go there myself, but grew up on a dairy farm in Ohio. That's kind of where my family is all from, where I spent really all of my childhood years. Spent some time in New York, went to school there, roundabout through California, now live in Washington. My career up until really 12, 13 years ago, it really centered around agriculture. Predominantly in the dairy industry. I was a nutritionist for dairy cows. I did that for 13 years. I also spent a handful of years in the midst of that consulting commodity markets, trading commodity markets for dairy farms. So spent a large amount of my professional time there. Then kind of through a process of just, I'm a person of faith, and God kind of led me along the path of got involved in human nutrition through a network marketing company, health and wellness network marketing company, owned a gym for a little while. And so that was a great experience. And one of the things that I was really challenged by growing up, one is it's just relating to people, understanding people, working around people. That was much of kind of a pain point during my nutrition career. And I thought, man, my job is to work with cows, is to keep cows healthy and productive and do all that stuff. And then later on in life, I realized that no, it doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in real estate. It doesn't matter if you're in agriculture. It doesn't matter if you're in network marketing, whatever else. It's all people. It is all people. And I realized that through a lot of my pain and difficult times in life, and we all have those, I put barriers around me to try to protect myself that ended up making my ability to work with people and be viewed as someone that people enjoyed to work with really, really, really hard. And so that's kind of in a capsule of where I'm at now.
So Tyler, I do want to touch on one thing before we get into the intensity part of what we talked about in your leadership talk.
Yeah.
But you and Kelly have both been able to grow a tremendous, what we would call at KW downline of growing people into your network and recruiting, which also, I don't really love that word, Linda, and I would say building relationships, but is definitely a superpower.
Man, just leave that word for Adam. He's the only one that loves it.
That's right.
Dana, we'll say attracting.
There you go.
Linda
See,
and
now
I
Brad Lomenick says connecting.
Oh, yeah.
Connecting with people.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So attracting, connecting, that is both Linda, that is one of Linda and I's superpowers and something that we enjoy doing so much. And you guys, I feel like, have been really great at that too. So will you just touch on that first for a minute and about how you guys have been so great at attracting and connecting inside of your Isogenics network?
Yeah. It's funny. My wife shared a story the other day, and I almost, I'm going to, as I'm telling you this, I'm pulling it up on Instagram. Please forgive me. I didn't think I would go here, but it's really funny because she shared this story, and it is my wife. And I look at this meme, and it says this picture of a lady. She's sitting at this beautiful table. Did you see it? Dana saw it. Okay. So this is what she says.
So hard.
Yes. And she, it says, me, I'm such a fun, approachable person. Also me. And it's this look of RBF, of just like, don't talk to me. Don't speak to me. Now, what the funny thing is what came next is when this person shared the next story, which was, I always thought that. And Tyler was such the nice person that I just kind of gave you a chance. And so
Linda, this girl commented on Kelly's and said, I actually thought that of you through the second and fourth grade, but Tyler was always so nice to me.
Yes. Yeah, that was exactly it. And so I share that partly because that's where each of our personalities are a little bit. I'm more of what, a smiling, engaging. I want to get to know people, curious. My relationships over my, lifetime have scattered the country. Partly being involved in things I was involved in, living in different parts of the country, and always had these connections and relationships and didn't really look at it as how can I use them to get ahead? It was just, build friendships in kind of imagine this bee that goes from plant to plant to plant to plant to plant. My wife, on the other hand, much different. My wife built very close, tight-knit relationships, and those just kind of blossomed and furthered for time after time after time. And so it really, our business success has been leveraging both of those, but yet there's this quality of my wife, and it's why that meme is so powerful. And I think this is something that there's always this intrigue. They're like, I want to know more. I want to know more. And I think that's the superpower that my wife has is everyone's looking at her and they're saying, I just want to know more. And that's what I find that we've been married 17 years plus, been together now almost 18. And I still find myself, there's more. I want to know more. There's this constant, almost this enigma where you're not really sure, is she what she is? But that's what's so attractive as a personality, and her care and love to serve and help people. And that's where we each have that differently. And so getting back to the connecting and attracting and just building these relationships, I think one of the things that I really focus on, and it's having that desire to just be curious. One of the books that I've committed to reading this year, which I've absolutely loved, and I'm actually going to dive into one of their specific books for next year, is Robert Greene's book, The Daily Laws. And actually there's a segment, The Daily Laws.
Oh, laws.
Laws. Yes. Sorry, I'm not speaking Southern. Okay. The Daily Laws. Laws.
Linda
Is that good? Laws?
What?
You got to say a little more Southern, Tyler.
A little more Southern. Little laws. Laws. Is that good? Laws? There you go. Okay. And where he talked about is this idea that we get to a certain age in our life and the world is so big and we have this impression of the world that we become jaded to the world. And his encouragement there was, look at the world with the curiosity and wonder of a child. Mm-hmm. You know, you're so small. There's this world that's so big, but the world that you know, you understand. And yet you're curious to know more about the world. And when I read that, when I think about that and I talk to people about that, if you choose to have that curiosity, that's what leads to connecting. That's what leads to actually being a great leader, in my opinion, because you're curious about, oh, why do you think that way? Why do you see it that way? And if I can understand how someone else sees the same picture that I see, but from a completely different perspective, I have gained information to be able to help both of us.
Yeah, that's a great point, Linda. I feel like that's so true. It's how we talk about just keep asking questions and questions and more questions and staying in curiosity.
Oh yeah. I think of course I always think of Fierce because Fierce comes to mind when I hear things, but I love Susan Scott's way of saying, I see it different. So tell me more.
Yeah.
I love, you know, because it doesn't mean that you don't see things differently. It's just, you're more curious to try to be the one to be changed in the conversation. Whereas most time we go into conversations and we want to sell our point, or we just want to tell people what we think instead of, you know, trying to say, how can I be changed in this conversation? I love it. I love the curiosity.
So I have a question for both of you. Have you both, when was the last time actually you read, if you haven't read, that's fine, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People? So how long ago was it?
Oh my gosh, years.
Okay.
I haven't read it for a long time too. It's probably one of the first ones I read when I started following John, and it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So I would encourage both of you and the listeners, go read it again. And I just got done reading it last week, and I've read it. I've had kind of this pattern for several years now of reading it and Think and Grow Rich in December.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the reason why I bring it up is that point, Linda, where our human nature is that we're trying to convince people of something we know or a belief we hold. And it doesn't work. It never has worked. It didn't work when Dale Carnegie wrote the book and he understood it didn't work. And yet I was reminded reading that again. It's like, Tyler, that doesn't work. Instead, just, you know, to your point, Linda, it's like, I see it differently. Well, tell me, I want to know more about why you see it. And choose to be, not that it's a violation of your beliefs, but rather look at it to say, I wonder why they think differently. And, you know, the real lesson there is the ability to win people, but win people not convincing them that you know better or different, but win people that you are appreciated them enough to know, hey, I'm going to ask you, why do you see it the way you do? Because I may learn something. And, you know, taking that and coming back to the Robert Greene piece, it just makes me reflect. And again, this idea of, are we relearning at a rate to unlearn the things that really are not serving us?
Wow. That's a great point, Tyler. I this week had you guys ever heard of EMDR?
Yeah.
It's kind of rapid eye movement. For fun, Diana Kokoska and I went and did brain scans with Dr. Amen, and they came back that I had PTSD. And so one of the things they recommended was this EMDR training. And I hate that stuff so bad. I just want to go forward. I never want to go in the past. I just hate the past. And it's so interesting because part of what they do is make you try to, and I wrote down this, maybe we should spend more time trying to figure out, why do we see things the way we see them, right? Because instead of just thinking, well, that's just the way it is or it's right. And so in this process, I explained to the counselor, I said, look, here's a perfect example. We had a key employee quit this week. I mean, if she had been reporting to me, my nervous system would have went through the roof. It would have been like my nerves were on fire. But it's interesting, I was one removed, and Jimmy was so calm, and he just didn't act like it even fazed him at all. And I'm over here, my response is a little judgmental and critical. And when I'm in this, how could she do that? We just got him a house and blah, blah, blah. I mean, just, you, Dana, you got a little bit of it because you had some similar situations. I said, well, let me tell you about what happened to me. But the whole point of this is when I saw it through the lens of I've been programmed to respond fight or flight on anything that I feel like is about to go bad. So, Tyler, what you're saying is so important because I don't think we even see it in ourselves until we have to see it in ourselves. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And so I have podcasts, Impact Driven Leader podcast, and I just released an episode, re-released it. It's the most viewed, downloaded episode that I've recorded so far is with Dr. Caroline Leaf.
Yeah,
and it's
very
cleaning
good,
up your
by the
mental
way.
mess.
Yeah.
And it was fun for me to revisit that episode, partly because the things that she shared now almost a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. But one of the keys that I learned, and you make a point there, I don't want to revisit the past. And that is a safety mechanism. Like we all have these safety mechanisms that we choose to put, they're barriers, right? They're barriers because a barrier will help you, and we'll get into that. And the fear of if I look back, then I'm opening the door for that to happen again is what our brain is telling us. And one of the things that she shared and I revisited was so amazing. And it's two things. One, toxic thoughts. Your brain reacts the same way to toxic thoughts as your body does to a virus. So if you have a toxic thought, it all of a sudden your brain sends its immune system to go protect, to seal that off, to block that out.
Yeah.
Just like your body would a virus. And her encouragement and her solution to that is when you have those feelings, say, why? Why do I have these feelings? What makes me feel this way? What experience did I have that makes me feel that way? And to me, this is what I learned in that process of revisiting and rethinking and talking about the barriers that I've used to protect me. Is the moment that you say and just stop and pull back and say, why do I feel this way? What experience do I have? Opens the door to self-awareness.
Yeah.
Until you ask those questions, until you're willing to reflect and say, why do I have this response? And here's the thing that most people, I would guess, I would say it was me beforehand, before I kind of started going through that process, they think that's normal. They think that's normal to just react that way. The fight or flight, well, this is how you get through life. The reality is that's a toxic thought that is building this tree that is just taking root and saying, this is how you're going to forever act, instead of saying, that doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve me or the people around me. It just makes me tense and frustrated. And, no one wants to be around me, but that's on them. That's not me. This is how I get through things. And it was great to revisit that. And, to me, it's one of the other lessons that I've learned this year reading Robert Greene. There was one day he shared in this Daily Reader, and he questioned, what's the age of the information you consume? So let me bracket that and put that in a little bit more description. Say you were to all the words that you were to read today in a book, in a text message, in whatever, say you were watching TV. When was that produced? Meaning, is it a TV show that's the current news that was produced instantaneously? It was maybe a newsletter or email or something that was produced a few weeks ago or a month ago. Was it a book that was written 2 or 3 years ago? Or was it a book that was written 8,000 years ago? And he says in that, and really, your perspective changes relative to the age of information you consume. If you're consuming information that is in the instant, you can't see perspective from that. You can't say, okay, that happened. Well, what then happened over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, or 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, years? The cool thing about, I've done this practice now for years now. several years. And I'm so thankful as I go through this, reading Proverbs, the book of Proverbs every day. Well, that was written by Solomon thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. And by reading through that, the perspective it gives me, it's the same stuff that you and I are dealing with too.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. And the lessons there, the wisdom's there is the same. And so when we get caught up in the, oh my goodness, this is the end of the world, it's never happened before. No, you could probably go back through history if you're willing, what's documented over the last several thousand years, and you're going to find something that may not be exact, but it's going to be pretty similar, and there's going to be something to learn from it. Mm-hmm. So
I love
that's why Dana and I always say we need an adultier adult, because I remember Keller used to do that with me when I was really having crisis moments or whatever. And I think the reason he did it is just what you just said. He wanted me to understand that if you choose to be a leader, let me tell you when that happened to me. And I always came away with the same thought. Okay, if it happened to him, and it sounds like his was way bigger, then it's normal. I'm on the right path. This is normal things that happen when you're on a leadership path. And there's something about that gives you comfort to know that. But we talk about that, Dana, a lot. And I think as leaders, we got to have somebody that we can say, gosh, because you do feel like you're the only person in the world's happened to, or it's only happened this way, or how can this be happening to me?
Yeah.
I thought I had protected myself.
Well, one layer to that, though, is we think that because that's all we can see.
Yeah.
I had this lesson I learned in the last few weeks, month. It's the difference between a mirror and a window. And do you know the thing about a mirror? A lot of times people will say, hey, look in the mirror. Mm-hmm. Well, this is what happens when you look in a mirror is you see a reflection. Meaning, as I look into the mirror, the right side of my face all of a sudden looks like the left side of my face. That's the perspective I see. And so what I see in that reflection is this impression of something that's not really the case. Mm-hmm. It's a reflection. It's not true. When you look through a window and I tell you, Dana, hey, you're looking through the window, you're looking directly at me, describe what you see. And if I were to say I was like a police sketch artist and I was really good at it, it would look different than what I see in the mirror because it's a reflection. And what I've learned in that, and take that into a leadership perspective, if as leaders we fall into the pattern of, oh, I'll just go look in the mirror, I'll just do it on my own, then all we're ever going to see is the reflection, and that's our perspective. And that's not what people looking across from us, what they see. They see through the window. And so the only way to see what they see is to ask them, hey, what do you see through the window?
I love that.
And if you're constantly looking in the mirror, then you're going to be jaded and say, well, everyone else, what they see is wrong. What I look in the mirror, that's right. And like, nope, what you see in the mirror is a reflection. Mm-hmm. That's a perspective. That's not what other people see because of how a mirror reflects back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Love that. That's so good. I love that. Okay. Wow. This has been really great. And we haven't even got to the part I wanted to get to yet.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Okay. So let's segue, because all this was really great to lead up to. Just share what you feel comfortable sharing with, Tyler.
Yeah.
You had a really powerful story, and I think it's so great that you share it, because I feel like people say, you connect with somebody so much deeper when you learn something personal about them, or when you feel like, they've gone through something that you've gone through or whatever. But will you just share a little bit about what you went to, and then how that rolls over into how the intensity part? Because as soon as I heard that, I told it to Linda and I said, he's just as intense as we're all intense. Like, help us. How can we?
Well, I mean, so there's really no secret here that we're going to talk about intensity, right? Is that, that's fine. Let me frame it up in this way. One of the things that I've learned through this process of personal growth, and as I mentioned earlier, this idea of starting to understand from a self-awareness point of view, what barriers did I have that reflected the relationships and my ability to impact and lead and serve others. And in one of them, the first one that I really recognized was a big deal was my insecurity. And, the insecurity is For me, I discovered the way it was masked, how it showed up. And one way that it showed up for me is to be in a social situation and try to share all the information, the knowledge that I knew. And as I learned this morning reading from that book of Proverbs, that's the fool's way. Actually, the wise way is to understanding of the knowledge. That's what a wise person does, and not just having knowledge. Yeah. And so that's what I realize is a real barrier. And that's a barrier for so many leaders. They want to have the answers. They want to be able to be the person when people look at it and say, hey, Dana or Linda, what do we do? And to be able to have those answers. And as I learned and I gained wisdom and understood, that's not what a leader does. A leader instead says, I don't know the answer, but you know what? We're going to figure it out together. They're willing to go with you and not be the one that constantly has the answers. Maybe they don't have the experience, but you know what? Together we can figure this out.
Yeah.
The next one of the barriers, there's 4 of them that I realized that affected me and so many other leaders was inactivity. Inactivity was I'm not going to have tough conversations. Maybe all of a sudden it's that day, and I know you guys are in real estate. It's going to someone and saying, hey, I thought this sale was going to go through, but it's not going to go through. And instead of telling you today, I'm just going to let it, all of a sudden, we're not going to close for another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, and really delay this. Now interest rates are sky high compared to what they would have been because there was an issue on my end, but I'm just going to push it off and blame it somewhere else so I don't have to take credit for it and, really lose trust and capital. That's an inactivity as a leader. The other one is, hey, we need to have that tough conversation you were kind of referring to a little bit earlier, Linda, with an employee, having that. And as I've learned in those conversations, there are 2 great things come from tough conversations. And they're both moving forward. You either move forward together or you move forward separately. It's great either way. And so if you can look forward to it in that way, if you can have that perspective, it's all good. The next one, before I get to intensity, is insensitivity. Yeah. So as a leader, not being able to understand and realize what someone else is going through and choosing not to. Saying, you know what, you don't have kids, I have kids, then I don't understand why you can't figure it out and deal with it. I have 3 businesses, you only have 1. I can't figure out why you can't do what you're supposed to do. I do this as the executive and I have all this on my plate. I can't figure out why you can't just get the job done. Mm-hmm. Being insensitive to what other people are going through, because a lot of times it's things that you have no comprehension that are affecting them, but yet you have the ability to make a difference. You can choose to pour it on, or you can choose to walk with them and help them through that process. Be empathetic. The last one that I understood, and it took me a while to realize that this was a real barrier, is intensity. And I'll take for a moment, and you guys listening in or maybe even watching on YouTube, think about the look, the demeanor, the makeup of someone that's intense. If you're watching on film and you kind of look at their scrunched up face, their furrowed eyebrows, they're just really animated and they're just ready to go. That's someone that's intense. Mm-hmm. And what I've realized in life is people don't like to be around intense people unless they're really intense themselves. And then if you're really intense yourself, you kind of get to a point where you're like, all right, I've had enough. I need to go away. and for me, I understood that, my intensity is a barrier. My intensity is a barrier for me to put my arm around people and go with them. At one point it was labeled, your expectations are so high, no one can do them. Mm-hmm. And that's a barrier of intensity, because if that's constantly the case, even if they are thoroughbreds that can run with you, eventually they're going to say, I can't keep this pace. Mm-hmm. This doesn't work for me. For me, where there was a point in my professional career where I was sitting down one day, I just got done working out. I was sitting down on the bench at the gym in the locker room, and I was drinking my protein shake. And I had this feeling come over me, and it was audible or impressionable. And it was, this is how you deal with things. And at that point, I was going through probably a pretty similar situation to what you described earlier, Linda. I was having to deal with some employees that no longer wanted to be on our team. And I thought I had done what they needed me to do. And there was this tension between myself and a couple different employees. And it was just like, I just got to put my head down and get through this. And that's where God, I attribute that came from. It's like, Tyler, that's how you deal with things. See, what Dana alluded to earlier and where I realized that came from is when I was 14, I had a younger brother die in a farming accident. I was 14 and I had accidentally drove over him. I grew up on a farm, as I shared earlier, and he was 3. And after that event, I remember vividly as sitting across from, both of you looking into the camera right now, talking to the sheriff who was asking me about what happened. And it was a Saturday afternoon. It was, June day. It was in the summer. And he's sitting on the hood of his car and I'm standing in front of him. I'm only 14. I'm not real big. I'm not real tall. I was kind of a small kid. And he's asking me these questions. And he's like, what happened and everything else. And I looked at him, stern look in my face. And I said, you can ask me all the questions you want. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into that barn, looked over my left shoulder where the barn was, and I'm going to milk cows because they need to be milked. So if you want to ask questions, great. You can come along with me. Other than that, we're done. And it was from that vivid moment in my mind that's just ingrained in my brain. That's how I got through life. If we were to, do a call-in show, say we were to invite some people here and they went to high school with me, they knew me in those years. And they would say, hey, how intense was Tyler in high school? They'd be like, off the charts. They've told me that. My coaches that I was involved in organizations and doing things that I was started when I was really young that knew me in high school. They're like, man, you're always just a fun, loving, great kid. And yet that changed you. It made you super intense. And part of that was some of the relationships I had with my family, and how I got through that was to just bury it and put my head down and push. And what I realized much, much later in life, and where I realized this is a barrier, is it comes back to what I said earlier. You might be able to get away with it for a little while, but eventually your bulldozer will push everyone away. And when you push everyone away and you're standing there and you're looking around, whatever you have accomplished, I guarantee this moment will happen at some point. Was it worth it? Is this where I want to be? Is this who I want to be with? Because a lot of people, they use the crutch of intensity. They use the crutch of intensity to succeed. And it's almost, some people are like, that's the only way possible. Yet what I find is you look at a lot of people that have impacted many in their life and accomplished amazing feats. And there's a lot of them that are happy, they're gregarious, they're engaging, they're inviting, and they want to take people with them. And I've looked and realized that's the person I want to be. Because being that other person who I've had an experience in a career doing ends up in a situation like, no one likes me. No one wants to be with me. As much as I try, the crowd just keeps getting a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. And it becomes, well, those are the only people that can keep up with you. No, the reality is those are the only people that you've chosen to, the ones that have chosen to put up with you, or the ones that only you can put your arms around. I look at it as, if that community is not growing, then it's a you problem.
So Tyler, do you think, this is great. Do you think a couple things? One, do you think it has anything to do with a person's behavior? Because I've also been called intense. I've also worked on it in my life, very much so. And my first wake-up call came from a mastermind I was in when someone said, oh, you always look so serious and so intent. I'm so surprised that you're not who I thought you were, right? Okay. Yeah. And I thought, okay, Linda, that's not how I want to be described. So what do I need to do to change it? However, I am always in my head first. I'm not a highly social usually with a purpose. Do you think behavior plays into what's going to be normal for you and you're going to have to modify that? Or what are some of the tools that you used to, because I always was shocked. It never reflected my heart. But when I would walk through an office, I walk fast, I walk looking forward. Those are all signals to people that don't talk to me. I'm busy, or whatever.
Well,
right?
It's also a signal of this. And I think this is the perspective myself. And as I say this, I'm still working on it, right? I don't have this figured out yet. I'm still working on it.
Dang.
And what helps me is people that have only known me in the last 3 or 4 years that I've been actively working on this hard. When I share this with them, they're like, that really surprises me.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
That's what I said. I was shocked to hear that. Honestly, I could see you being intense with just you're very disciplined and you're up every morning at whatever time. And I see you post your Bible app, fairly close to when I post mine, but you're 3 hours ahead of me. So I'm like, golly, he's up early with this. But I was shocked to hear the rest because I would never have guessed that about you, knowing you now.
Yeah. But there's moments where I have a list of tasks to do. I need to get it done. There's a certain time frame. I put my head down and I do it. I mean, this happened to me a few weeks ago. It's happened to me and it will happen again because it's something that I have to stop and realize, ooh, that's not the impression that I want to give people. And the impression that I'm giving people is they don't matter. What I want to accomplish. And that's how it was exposed to me. I did the very first program ever did, first involvement with John Maxwell. Kelly and I, my wife, we joined his executive circle program, which I'm excited. Joel Manby is leading. They're bringing back again. It's just getting started. And in that was the first time I ever did a 360 review.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had to do a 360 review. So I sent it out to people, the whole litany of people. And this is what the great distilled information that I took away that I've used to grow from was this. It's all about your goals. And that was like, okay, here's the thing that's funny about that. Even as I sit down today, I have this little Post-it note. This is the Post-it note. These are the last, some people may have a problem with this. That's okay. These are my last recorded goals. And let me just read off the date. By 1/1/21, by 4/1/21, by 12/30/20, by 1/1/21. You see, that was a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And that was part of it is going back. I didn't have necessarily, I have to achieve these goals. I wanted to help other people achieve goals. Mm-hmm. I wanted to help other people grow and accomplish. And so that's what really struck me and why, there's things that I want to work towards, but I'm working towards those every day. And, I, again, adopt this from John. He shared it with us. It's like, I don't have goals. I have a growth plan.
Yeah.
No, you tell me what I'm growing. I read every day. I, write every day. I try to connect with people every day. I, find ways to share information daily. Those are things I do every day, and I will commit to doing those every day. And so I look at where I'm at now, and I look back when, some of these dates were, and I'm like, yeah, all right. I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. I don't need a fill in the box, little tally sheet to help me move forward because I realized that actually increased my intensity and my frustration if it wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't stop and see that progress was actually being made. Mm-hmm. And it's not about how much progress. It's just, are you progressing? Yeah, Dana.
I was just, do you think, would that be one of the answers then to Linda's question of tools? Like you're using some of those things to bring down the intensity a little bit. Do you know do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think each personality is a little different. If you need I do believe this, if you having goals helps you create that and chart that path to what you want to accomplish, great. Then you need that. That's fine. And celebrate those. But don't let it get between you and the people that you want to go with. Mm-hmm. Because a little bit of grace goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I think that helps me temper and say, hey, all right, we're moving forward. We're moving forward. It's okay. The second part of that is constantly remind yourself there is no task. I'm saying this. I probably should write it down myself as I say this. There is no task more important than the people around you.
Yeah.
None. Does not matter what it is. As I say that, I'm guilty, probably even recently, of not keeping that in perspective. Now, what's funny about this is that intensity and passion, I don't know where to discern the difference, but I say this. I believe passion takes people with you. Intensity pushes people away.
That's a great description.
Yeah, I agree.
And I believe if you're passionate and you care, people are appreciative and they want to go with you.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when you're so intense and you're driven, people are like, "Ooh, boy, let me get out of here. Let me just get out. Let me make it easier. Let me get out of your way. You got a plan. You know the answer is let me just get out of your way." And I think when we operate with passion, I believe we allow ourselves to be more human. And we accept that I can't do this all on my own. I can't do it without other people. I can't will this to happen by myself. That's a lot more fun with others.
Tyler, when
Yes, ma'am.
you after you talked about this at the summit, I was flying somewhere. I can't remember, flying to or from somewhere. Anyway, and I decided, I was really thinking about this, and I was thinking, like, I know how I can be, but I also know how hard I've worked to not be that way too sometimes. So I decided to do the exercise where I just posted on my social media, what are the first 3 words that come to your mind? Like, just shoot me straight. When you think of me, like, what are the first 3 words? Because I really, truly wanted to know really what the number 1 was, but the order. And I had a ton. I just flipped through my book to find it, but I had a ton of responses. And it was interesting. My first one was generous. My second one was authentic or real. And my third one was like a tie between driven, determined, and intense. And really, like, that's, I'm thinking about you saying the mirror versus the window. And it did make me feel better. Like, yes, driven and determined and intense was in there, which can be great qualities.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the number 1. And I think would it have been the number 1, I probably would have been a little like, okay, I need to work. I got a lot more work to do, not just a little bit more work to do. But it is kind of cool to think about doing that exercise or something like that, because what we see, the mirror versus the window thing, I mean, it's, and a lot of them were people that I lead, or people, I mean, some were people that I barely know, and other people that are really close to me. But just hearing that and getting that feedback, because we always have work to do, but you still at least know kind of where you're at on the level of work to do.
Yeah. You know, I think what's something to share, and again, I know that we're all 3 have a common faith. And this is something when you talk about working on yourself, this goes back to a lot of those toxic thoughts, the conditioning ourselves, that, you know, as you talked about having, you know, post-traumatic, Linda, is our brain works in a way to protect us from past experiences. That isn't how we were created. That wasn't in the perfectness we were created. However, that can be used to serve a purpose if we choose to. And the growing and the understanding and looking through the window in the mirror is saying, how can I use that instead of, oh, this is what I've become, or, well, this is just the way I am. So no. Let's unwind that and say, how can I use that? And I believe this. I believe this just as much as, you know, me sharing the story about myself and my brother is, I know this. It's been revealed to me, and I'm cool with it. Just sharing that story means his life has purpose.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's really exciting, because, you know, I had a friend, maybe you guys know him, Brian Brochet. He wrote the book, The Purpose Factor. And he shared this with me, and it was so powerful, and I've continually thought about and used it. And he talked about his own traumatic experiences as a teenager. And he said, Tyler, I've decided to, and I've chosen to use gratitude as a weapon. I'm grateful for the experience because it allows me to share and help and serve others because of that experience. My pain can actually be used for good. Yeah. And, it's not saying, I need to fix myself or change myself. No. It's understanding how can that be used in a good way instead of let me keep putting all these Band-Aids on it, which just lets it fester. And then I can't scar over and allow it to show and say, hey, I have a scar. It's stronger now. I'm good. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that.
I love it. Well, and something just came to thought. A question that always helps me is, because I think space always helps. We have a saying around our house is that this is my reaction, not my response, because I think our reaction comes from ingrained the way we were taught to deal with things or get away from things or do whatever. So I always try to give myself a little bit of space, and I always say, how's that working for me? Because is it moving me closer to what I say I want in my life, or is it moving me farther away? And sometimes it's not harming anybody else. It's just harming me, And so for the first time, you got to look and say, okay, a lot of what I can do can harm other people, but there are some things that you could be handling things in a certain way, or thoughts or beliefs that you have that are actually working against you, and they're just not serving you well. Awesome. Tyler, you want to offer any final thoughts? We could probably go on for a whole nother episode here, but maybe we'll have to do another part 2 or whatever. Great information. I love it. I find also the older I get, the more I realize that as a leader, you're right. It isn't about me at all. It's about other people. And so that takes a lot off. Honestly, you travel the world lighter when you can get to that place, a lot lighter.
Man, there's so much wisdom in that, Linda. And I think that the difference there is, to me, it's a little bit about this. It's what is my role as a leader, or as I'm serving people? What does it really mean? Is it about what I do, what I contribute? Am I being held to that standard? Or is it how much that I can help you get through and accomplish more? Yeah. And I truly, once we understand that, I think as leaders, and take the focus off, John shared this and was lucky to, kind of learn it. John Maxwell, that is the difference between success and significance. Mm-hmm. And once you can tune into significance, and I think there's one last thing to leave with is, my desire has been to really chase after significance, because to mold this together and to bring it together and kind of tie it together, my intensity drove me after success. And it was either always fleeting or never happened, or it was never good enough. And yet the desire to choose significance is a path that, coming back to these little goals, means that it's irrelevant. If I'm continuing to work in small ways, if I'm continuing to do little things that I know the seeds are being planted today that I may not see, but I'm okay with that, man, all of a sudden the opportunities that are afforded to me, the chance to sit down with both of you and to share with you, that's what's come of it. And yet if I would have been out there trying to force it, I'd never have that opportunity. And with the amount of, I would say, levity, and to your point, it's a lot easier because it's like, I know I'm sharing because I'm offering something that I've gone through and to help, and not like I have an agenda where I'm trying to push it forward.
Yeah.
Well, you can feel that too, Tyler, from you when you speak. And that's just one of the reasons I love having you speak to my group and now to all the podcast listeners, because you can feel that. And I think it's so impactful to so many people, regardless of if they have a similar, story, or they can relate somehow, they can get something out of this. I mean, I again have taken 3 pages of notes, and the way that you share and communicate is so good. So thank you so much.
Well, so Tyler, as we close out, how can people find you and follow you? I heard you had a podcast. What's the name of it, and how can people find it?
Yeah. So the Impact Driven Leader It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, wherever you follow podcasts. It's also on YouTube, so you can see my shiny bald head on those episodes. Love for you to subscribe there. As well, I lead a leadership community called the Impact Driven Leader Community. So I do a few things there. Have a workshop where I actually go through the barriers a little bit more, kind of some mindset stuff. So do that every couple of months. So you can go to my website, you can check out, sign up for that or to learn more. So.
And they can connect with you on Instagram too. We'll make sure we put that stuff in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Instagram,
awesome.
LinkedIn. One of the things I do daily is I share a thought of the day. So that goes on live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all those places, YouTube. So you can also check that out if you want to see a little bit of what I'm reading every day. That's what I share there and kind of how it makes me think and grow. So.
Awesome. And as usual, Dana, we have at least a couple more books to add to our list. So remember, if you have not, it's getting long. So remember, if you have not done it already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And the greatest compliment you could give Dana and I is to give us a great review. And then also, but better than the review, is to pass this podcast along to someone that you think would benefit from our conversations. If you have a challenge, an opportunity, or a topic you would love for Dana and I to discuss on the podcast, be sure and reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. And Tyler, I want to say again, thank you so much. Great conversation today. And Dana, I guess I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. See you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.